Okay, so we have the Microsoft Surface Pro 5 on the preheater. I have it at 85 Celsius, and then to just help things along, I'm going to put these eye openers from iFixit. These guys, these tools are quite helpful. And then we're going to change the direction we're working in. Okay, so now the Microsoft Surface is truly a pain in the ass to take apart, or very difficult to take apart. They break very easily. So now, while the device is warm and heating up, we're going to use these plastic playing cards to make our way in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some rubbing alcohol on the card itself. You can't use too much alcohol because it can get into the backlight layers and then just ruin the screen. So we're going to make our way in through that slot by the speaker. That's the easiest way, though. And these guys break way too easily. Even right now, I feel it's, oof, my heart rate is going up because I really don't want to damage this. Okay, so now that my playing card is in a little bit, I'm going to use some rubbing alcohol to help soften the adhesive. And the alcohol will now get in there much better using the card. It is important I take my time with this, otherwise it is so easy for these things to get damaged. But once you're in with the card, the task does get a little bit easier. Usually the trick is you have to let the heat and the alcohol do the work for you. You got to give the alcohol and heat some time. And then as the alcohol gets in, it will soften the adhesive, allowing you to slide the card lower. The moment you'll feel a slight resistance when the alcohol evaporates, then at that point introduce a bit more alcohol on the card and then slide it down until you feel it snag. And then when that happens, more alcohol and patience. These eye openers really help in that regard. They keep the screen still warm, and then the preheater will ensure the entire device is at a nice and toasty 85 degrees Celsius. If you put it up any higher, there's a risk of warping the backlight layers on the device. So I found 85C to be like the sweet spot. So far, so good. We've got one side mostly dealt with. Now that's the thing. Once you have the screen off, that's only half the battle, because the battery is also in there with some pretty strong adhesives. Now the bottom side of the screen is not very deep, so you can't go in more than this red line. The best way to know how far in to go on the bottom is to just check it with, now I can always put in these plastic playing cards to help keep it off, but we'll come back to it in a second. Now on the bottom side, can't go in too deep because all the flex cables for the screen are run along its length on the bottom. Now we're gonna move to this. Okay, I accidentally just touched my preheater. Temp is still the same. Now you can always put a bit of alcohol along the edge of the screen. That's not going to hurt anything, and in fact it will help make the removal slightly easier. Okay. Though the alcohol won't really go in from the edge until the screen starts to let go a bit. So it'll go in near where the opening card is, but no more. It's very important to be patient when doing this task, because trying to rush it will cause problems. It is still scary because I really don't want to have to replace this screen. Because trying to get good quality screens for the surfaces has been difficult. Now on this side as well, you've got the flex cables for the screen or the digitizer, so you have to be very careful on that side too. But we should just be able to work our way down and take our time with it. So even on this side, we're going to move the eye opener. Try to have it right on the edge where the adhesives are. You can kind of see my opening tool right here. It is still inside the edge of the screen. So now I'm going to try and, okay, so while, see, that perfectly highlighted the importance of just waiting and letting the alcohol release the adhesive. And then using the eye opener to cut the adhesive holding the screen on first. So the eye opener is still in the edge, but you can see, you can't really see on camera, but as the light reflects, you can kind of see the glass bulging where the connector is. So it tells me that the adhesive hasn't released fully on this side. But we're making progress. Slowly but surely. Surely, surely you say, surely indeed. Yeah, it's easier now because the adhesive's gone in there. I can feel a bit on this side. All right, so far so good. Now you can go a little bit deeper on the sides because even though the adhesive is not that thick, there's a pretty big gap between the digitizer, between the LCD and digitizer, between the LCD and the digitizer, yeah. Yeah, it's proven a little sticky on this side, so we're gonna now right where the speaker grill is, the adhesive is a little bit deeper. You'll feel it with your tool as you go in. And you can feel it cut the adhesive as well. Careful. All right, so now the front. Now this part is always the trickiest because you have the, here, we're going to move this eye opener to the front. Keep this on the bottom, or on the side, I guess. Actually, here, put that over there. Move this a little bit closer. So on the front, you've got the flex cable for the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi antennas, and that flex is stuck pretty strongly to the adhesive for the screen. So it is a little tricky to get your tool in there and not cut the flex cable, but I'll do my best. Now sometimes that stupid flex gets caught on the screen, and then the opening pick can cut it, even with the plastic cards, because the flex cables aren't that strong. So that part always makes me a little bit nervous, because it's easy enough to replace that part, but you don't want to damage something while working on it. That kind of defeats the purpose. But anyway, with the front, I like to be even more careful. Use plenty of alcohol to help things along. It is separating nicely so far. You have to be careful here where the cameras are. However, they are also attached. I mean, there's adhesive behind them. Oh, careful. I can feel the adhesive becoming stronger. So I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. This job, the main part, or the most important thing when doing this job, is it has to be done with all the patience in the world, or rather, the patience of a saint. You have to take your time, and the moment you feel any resistance from the adhesive, you need to stop and either adjust your eye opener heat mat, or use a bit of alcohol with your opening tool. And then once you've used, or once you've applied the alcohol to your tool, give it time. It needs time to work on the adhesive, to soften it, to make it release. Oh, that creaking noise was scary. Okay, I need some more eye opener contact here. Move that. Now I'm leaving the other eye opener on the edges because keeping whatever adhesive is still attached warm, which will make removal easier. Okay, now we've gone down all four corners, but it hasn't let go completely. So we're going to have to go around it one more time, but it'll be a lot easier this time. So we're going to put it on the device once again. All right. Okay, so now let us stand this guy up and then see. Okay, so the next trick is I'm going to zoom out so that you can see what I'm doing. But as you can see, it is starting to separate, but it hasn't quite gotten there. So now we can look down the side and then separate the entire side. So let me see if I can show you. But as you can see, the right side has let go. So now we're going to do the same on the left side. It is important to keep it on the preheat mat while you do this, and also important that you don't go in too deep with the tool, especially on the bottom side. So now we're going to do the same thing. Just lift it up and then separate the adhesive from the device. So as you can see the adhesive strands. So now you can visually go through it and just cut the adhesive away from the screen. You have to be careful as you do this in order to ensure you don't accidentally damage the screen or any of the flex cables. All right, screen is separated on two sides. So even on this one, as we go down the edge, the screen will let go. All right, so the top side is also off. Now we're going to do the top. So same thing, you see the adhesive strands. You'll see the adhesive strands, like right here. And as you cut these with the plastic card, it will release the screen. And voila! That is how you remove a Microsoft Surface screen that has never been disassembled. Okay, now the next step is to release these guys, these clips, which will then allow us to unplug the flex cables. Now I can also switch off my bottom heater, and it's going to be difficult for me to show you on camera, So I'm just gonna remove these and then show you. And then we can inspect the screen, make sure none of the flexes have been damaged, though I think we did okay in removing it. Okay, so that's the first clip. And this is the second clip we're on. All right, we have that one off as well. I'll be right there. All right, screen is off. Cables look okay. Okay, so now we've taken the screen off successfully. We are gonna plug it in, turn it on, make sure it still works. There we go. All right, so now, yeah, look at that. The screen is still okay. Fantastic. So now we're gonna shut it down, and then we're gonna change the battery. I'm just removing the old gobs of adhesive on the screen, though we don't need to do this step until we're ready to reinstall. So we're going to put this aside for now, and then we're going to start with this disassembly. So now we'll flip the surface with the right side up. We need a couple of screwdrivers for this job, so let me get the bits ready. The problem is, to get to the battery on these guys, the entire surface has to come apart, which does make the repair more challenging and time consuming. But at this point, we're past the hard part. So with this, we just have to remove the screws and then put them in the same orientation they were in on the board. That way you avoid mixing up screws and putting a long screw in a shorter hole, which is a recipe for disaster. Now, a lot of screws are under these shields as well, so we're going to have to remove those shields to gain access to the internals of the device. So I'll show you my screw layout once I've removed it. But essentially, I try to put these screws in a manner where it would look similar to the way the layout would be when they were on the board, like inside the frame. So when putting it back or reassembling it, it reduces the chances of accidentally mixing up a screw or two. Right.
Louise. Somebody just called me. Hi.
That's T3. That can stay there. Oh, this is T5. T3 can stay on here.
Yeah.
That's the T4. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've had them for a year, like, I mean, and they work on everything else.
Oh, yeah, yeah, no,
It's just, this one here wouldn't charge. They're 10 feet, I think. Yeah.
Those will require T3.
Yeah, they work on,
Yeah.
my
Now, even though like a bit that is one step up from the screw you're trying to remove might work depending on how worn out your screwdriver bits are, it is highly recommended that you avoid doing so, because that can cause serious problems. Okay, so now we're going to disconnect the FPC connectors for the fan. Now it is. I made a mistake using tweezers to lift those flaps up. You want to avoid shorting them to the board by accident. Now the next step to removing this board is to remove this housing, or to remove this shield. Now these guys can be quite tricky. So the trick with these is to lift at least a few of these flaps on the side, holding the heatsink down. Even if you lift one up, it gets it out, but you really don't want to bend these, and these teeth break very easily as well. So you want to try and remove this with as little tension as possible. Once you lift a side up, you could wiggle it off gently, and then it comes off pretty neat. But it's these teeth that hold it down. Honestly, this was not as frustrating as it normally is to remove these guys. But now we can remove those screws. I do believe those are T5. Let's see. This is T3. We don't need those. This is T4. That is a bit smaller. So we'll use the right sized bit. Yeah, those are T5. So we'll put these on the side.
Yeah, from inside, yeah, there's a long cable that comes from the brain of the phone up here all the way down to the bottom, and usually those cables tend to get.
Now you also don't want to bend these copper pipes when removing the heat sinks. So so that is properly stuck to the board.
Okay, we'll do that.
The thermal paste. However,
Can you tell me?
I need to get to that fan connector in order to get under, I believe, it's either this shield or this shield that has a screw. I think it's this one. So we have to remove this in order to get in under the board. we're going to use a plastic spudger to lift up, and I'm going to look at this from this angle to make sure I don't accidentally cause damage. There we go. It was just really, really stuck to that board or to that CPU. But the thermal paste is quite dry, so we're going to have to clean that off properly before we reassemble this device. But it doesn't look too bad. Let me see if I can show you though. So you see the thermal paste is quite dry.
These ones, there's an easier way to back it up if you have a computer.
Okay, so now we go back into the same orientation we were working in. And what I'll do is I will put these screws, oh, that's 2, 3 actually, under or next to where I have, next to where the screws are from the heatsink, because those guys will go in first. Now, doesn't feel like there may be a screw under there. There may be a screw under here as well. Okay, we'll start by removing that shield. I'll start at the top. So the trick is to get under those teeth, holding it down. Always use a blade and then get in under and then just twist to release it like that. It's better to use a blade you don't want to use for cutting adhesive, because then that ruins the tip. All right. Perfect. We got that off gently, and see it has 2 screws underneath it. There will be screws under this guy as well, I'm sure. Let us pop it open. All right. So the same thing, you just wiggle these clips off, and it comes off pretty nicely. Okay, so now we could just unplug these guys instead of having them flop about. And see, there is a screw under there as well, that guy. Okay, so that screw goes there. That can go there. This was all the way over here. This was all the way over here. Okay, we have to remove that as well so that we can disconnect the charging port and the SD card. And we'll disconnect these flex cables while we're at it. Oh, careful. We're gonna disconnect this speaker. And it's good. These things can break very easily. It's important to be careful. Right. See, they bend so easily. And it's because I need to detach it from this side first. All right, that is off. Then that can come off. Then we can disconnect that, and then we can disconnect the charging port. So in this, it's better to use two things to move this connector out, because you really do not want to damage that connector. Now we should be able to lift this motherboard up and out after we release the screw under there. So many hidden screws. To change the battery on these guys, the device has to come apart almost completely. There may be a screw under there as well. Let's pop it open and see. All right. Reasonably good shape. Ah, that was painful. And look, the last and final screw. Like, there's no need for those damn shields, or they could be better made, but no. Microsoft makes this device to be as difficult to repair as possible on purpose. The charging port from there, because I feel like that is not doing me any favors. Okay, get rid of that. Now, okay, much better. It's lifting up and out. Something else holding it in place. all those flex cables. I see. Oh, and should have moved this guy out as well. All right. Finally managed to get it out. So that is the Microsoft Surface Pro 5 motherboard. And those are the connectors for the battery.